Dr. Palmer reminds pet owners of the importance of getting their pets microchipped to help ID cats or dogs who may be brought to a vet or animal shelter so they can notify their owners and get them back home. By the way, Tarzan, who spent about a week at the Palmer Vet Clinic, was able to go home last week. Now to another rescue story. Some loons stranded on Lake George were saved from an almost certain death by a group of rescuers and volunteers. 3 loons were iced in on the lake on Valentine's Day. The Adirondack Center for Loon Conservation helped coordinate their rescue. A forest ranger, retired state biologist, and other volunteers all teamed up and ventured out onto the ice to save the birds.
I received a phone call from a birding friend of mine that said that she'd come across a few loons that were trapped in a small puddle of water in ice. The lake had frozen up the week before, on the Thursday and Friday with the below zero weather. We had several people helping us. I think there were about 9 of us all together. And a forest ranger came down and helped us too, Matt Savari. And so he and Lance Durfee and Lance netted. It took actually quite a while. It took about 10 or 15 minutes before he netted the first bird. And then they went back out and he almost immediately netted the second bird. And then the third bird swam under the canoe, and Lance kind of spun around in the canoe and called over to Matt, and he netted it from the edge of the ice and brought it to Lance to put in the third bin. And then we brought all the bins to shore and back to the vehicle and banded the birds, and then brought them to open water on Lake Champlain for release.
For the loons, there's little doubt that after they sort of were trapped, stranded, they were sitting ducks, so to speak, with eagles around.
Exactly, and there actually had been a 4th loon that had met its demise to the eagles probably on Friday evening. And this time of year, loons are molting. The birds are pretty much flightless for about a month. But loons also need to run on water to get airborne. It takes them about a quarter mile to get up in the air before they can fly. And running on snow and ice is not their favorite thing to do.
So you brought them to Lake Champlain. Are there sections of the lake, Lake Champlain, that are wider open and that they'll be safer there for the rest of the winter?
Exactly. This year the Lake Champlain did not freeze completely over, and so we released them just a little south of Essex where the water was wide open, and we released them one at a time, and they gathered up. They saw each other and went right to each other and then started swimming north. So that was pretty cool. So they seemed pretty relieved to be back on the water.
And it may surprise some people that loons would winter on Lake George. I think they would think that they would take off and head further south.
Right. And I don't know if these birds were Adirondack birds or if they were birds that came from further north and found open water and decided to spend the winter there because the water was open. So sometimes loons don't fly until they absolutely have to, because if the food's good, usually they go to the coast, but sometimes they do there. And occasionally up here, the other all the birds that we caught were adults. They were at least 3 years old because they were getting the black and white feathers in. But occasionally we do have juveniles that get caught iced in, and we think that it's because they don't know they need to migrate.
And for the 3 rescued from Lake George, again, released into open waters of Lake Champlain, and when you let them go, they probably were much happier.
They seem to be, yeah. And it's really important, especially with adult loons. They're a very long-lived species, so rescuing 3 adults can make a big difference for helping keep the population going.
So that's why you folks, when you hear of 3 of them trapped, if you can safely get to them, you do what you do.